welcome everyone this morning. The New Jersey Mayor's Committee on Arts and Culture is a program of ArtPride New Jersey in collaboration with the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. My name is Anne Marie Miller. I am Director of Advocacy and Public Policy at ArtPride New Jersey. I am a white cisgender female. I have a blurred Zoom background, and I have sort of gray hair that doesn't look gray hair, glasses, and I'm wearing a wine-colored shirt. I want to acknowledge the fact that I am at my home office in Hightstown, New Jersey, which is the ancestral land of the Lenni Lenape tribe, and Vince Hall is here, our manager of advocacy and community engagement, and he is helping operate all the Zoom controls behind us. And there is closed captioning available if you click it at the bottom of the screen. And a couple of things. This is our first webinar for the New Jersey Committee, Mayor's Committee on Arts and Culture. And surprise, there is no PowerPoint presentation or slide deck. Maybe the first time in a while for most folks. We will put a few links in the chat box for your reference. In addition, we will share the recording of this webinar afterwards, so those who are unable to join us can access it as a resource. And throughout our discussion, I would just ask you to, use the Q&A feature for panelist questions, because I know they're going to pop up as we move along. And also, please actively use the chat box. We are always seeking suggestions of topics for future webinars and areas of interest. So please, jot anything down there that you would like to see us focus on in the future. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our panelists. See if I can do this in alphabetical order. I'll try that. Regina Barboza is Director of Development and Strategic Initiatives for Newark Arts. Kenneth Leap is President of Reimagine Runnemede in Camden County, New Jersey. He's also an extraordinary artist. Fayemi Shakur is the Arts and Cultural Affairs Director of the City of Newark. Our goal today basically is to offer some insight into what is needed to develop a trusting and solid working relationship between local municipal government and local arts agencies, some of which may be areas, arms actually, of local government or nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to throw out a few questions and we're going to see where this conversation leads us. We actually had a conversation last week to prepare for this, and I wish we could have recorded that because it was a really solid conversation with these three extraordinary individuals. So I'll just kick it off by asking, how can local government and local arts agencies work together in a cohesive way? How much planning is needed to make that actually happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, like our conversation last week, Regina, I think it would be great if we started with you, because that's how I kind of entered this work, was through your work.
So Newark Arts Council is an advocacy group for promoting the arts and culture in sector in Newark, and supports the arts ecosystem. And a few years ago, maybe 2018, we did an 18 months community engagement to develop really the city's cultural plan, which is, a little bit different for a nonprofit to do a city cultural plan. It's called Newark Creates. I believe it's going to be available via the chat. But the outcome of that engagement was, and the overarching question was, what would it take for the arts to thrive in the city of Newark? And the three takeaways were funding, space, and coordination. And 2 weeks after Newark Arts presented to Mayor Baraka, he announced the Creative Catalyst Fund, which was a promise of, you know, it's been about $800,000 a year for 3 years. He also talked, and that's the funding piece. The coordination piece was to have a director of arts and culture, that is the illustrious Fayemi Shakur. And then the space question we're kind of working on now, right, Fayemi? We've done a workshop on city-owned properties that could ultimately become artist space, and trying to train people on how to take on properties and convert them, etc. Does that? So, and
Yeah,
we've Creative Catalyst Fund, I think to date has been about 2.3 million in aggregate to even sure how many artists in total. It's got
402.
Thank you.
402 grants, I should say.
Okay, yes. And that's a huge support system through the coming on this side of COVID, et cetera.
So we know, I'm sorry. So we know that there are not 402 artists in Runnemede.
No.
So just wanted to just shift real quickly to like the contrast here is we have Newark, which has an abundance of artists. You know, and every time I see the T-shirt, you know, Newark is for artists, I get excited. But we have also a small town in South Jersey, so represented by Ken. So if you could just chime in, Ken, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that was exactly what was going through my head as well. When you have a large city, there are a lot of resources. There are, I know the administration is more challenging because everything is bigger and more nuanced in that way. But I think what I'm noticing the small towns facing is like the lack of precedent really for there to be deep support of the arts, you know, at a grassroots level in these various small towns. And that's something that we're still trying to raise awareness about. I think a lot of it is conversations that we need to have directly with the public, as well as our elected officials.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, you're absolutely right, Kenneth. It does require the arts have to be prioritized by the administration. And so, you know, my work is somewhat easier because the priorities come directly from the mayor. And then all the other departments are supportive. So there are multiple departments that have to be involved besides mine. And that includes the law department, sometimes engineering, public safety for street closures. There's a great deal of coordination that has to happen. But because of that Newark Creates cultural plan that Newark Arts did, they were able to really lay out the blueprint for the city to demonstrate what the needs were. And it was the community members who were engaged in that plan over 18 months who told us what they needed and wanted. And so the mayor asked me to join his administration, partially because I worked in the artist community for 20 years and I knew it was my community. And I think that also made a difference, having someone knowledgeable of the artists and institutions in the community working for the administration to help advocate and communicate some of the concerns and create new policies and processes for making it a little easier to work together.
Yeah, one of the things that we've tried doing is, I would say our town and the towns around us are not often early adopters of new creative ideas. It takes a long time for that to sort of filter down. So some of it is raising awareness of the best practices that other small towns have tried. And that can be through sharing like really great TED Talks with other people. Hopefully that trickles up sometimes to the town council. We have, I think, ongoing, there is, people within the small towns want to see the arts thriving. They understand that that's an important part of culture. It's important, that makes the communities more livable. At the same time, you have to balance that out with, I think it's the perception from the administration and the town councils often that the arts community is fringe. It's a small part of the community. It doesn't have a broad base that appeals to everyone. So it's bringing up that understanding, through some, great, resources and, I guess, fact-driven information that like ArtPride has done for things like each, how many dollars invested in the arts actually trickle down and bring back, what that brings back to the various communities. So I think the challenge that I've seen is, I've had a career in the arts, spanning my whole life at this point. And I've been to many arts conferences, always heard how important the arts are for the local communities, what all that they give back. I think the challenge is looking around at the audience in those conferences and just seeing really no representation by the local government. They don't go to those things. It's always, the speakers are really preaching to the choir. Everyone in the room is nodding their head saying, yes, we understand this, we get this. So I think that the challenge becomes how to bring that message out to the people that have the most impact in programming within the local towns. And that comes back to our mayors and our elected officials. So I think it's great that Anne Marie and ArtPride are doing the mayor's program, that they're trying to engage local mayors, because I think it really comes down to their voice within the community.
So Ken, just before we move on, a question was just if you could explain what Reimagine Runnemede is.
Sure. So, well, let's see, what is Reimagine Runnemede? Well, it started out, Runnemede, if you're not familiar with us, we are a community of 8,500 people. We are 2.1 square miles geographically. Our town is bisected by the Black Horse Pike, which is a county road, and it is one of the historic, it's the historic road that would take people from Camden to Atlantic City. So as you're driving along in South Jersey, all of the communities tend to run together. You may not be really aware when you're crossing town boundaries, because we are all geographically built out. There isn't a lot of open space left in the area of Camden County that we are. We are the larger sort of a bedroom community for Philadelphia. So many people in our town historically did not work in Runnemede, but were either living here but then sending to another place. So we had on the Black Horse Pike was our historic business district, and when I got involved with, I guess, beginning to start Reimagine Runnemede, I had been an artist in residence down at the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center down in Millville for over 25 years. Although I lived in Runnemede, it was my hometown. I'm third generation here. My grandparents had a mom and pop grocery store. My dad was a sign painter, and then he later became the town historian. And one day, our mayor actually contacted me, and they had been doing some renovation on the Borough Hall, and came up like, oh, maybe we could do a piece of public art. And Ken is the local artist in town, so I was contacted. And after looking at the project, I made the recommendation to my mayor that, I've actually had a career doing public art all around the state of New Jersey. And a lot of my projects have actually been done for towns up in North Jersey, where there's money available to do public art, and there are communities that understand the importance of the arts. One of the ones that I think of that always does things at a very high level is Morristown, New Jersey, and the Morris Arts Council. I've done a number of projects for them. So I said to my mayor, hey, I've seen the ways that the arts can be used to revitalize local economies, can be used for all kinds of things. Would you like some additional ideas? And at that point, Nick Kapatis, he's my mayor, said, oh, you should be the town arts committee. So it kind of started out that way. It felt strange to be sort of a committee of one. So I reached out to some other people. And I started by thinking what could be done directly for our business district, because what I noticed, this was in 2018, about 30% of the businesses in our commercial corridor along the Black Horse Pike were vacant. And it's not like they had been vacant for, a few months. This has been something that really is like years. You have buildings that are closed and they don't appear to be for sale or for rent. They're just stuck. So I walked down the Black Horse Pike, and I took note of places where art installations could be done, mainly thinking murals, because that seemed to be kind of an easy direction that could happen. And in the process of doing that, I made the mistake, I guess, of calling a number on a for sale or lease sign on a small realtor's office. And I talked to the owner, and a couple weeks later, I decided, I'm going to buy this building. So I suddenly had a footprint and an investment on the main drag. And at that point, I wanted to meet some other local artists. So I began to open my studio to, have like a monthly salon. And through that, I met not artists, but people in town who wanted to see the arts thrive, who were interested in the arts. And that group of core people became Reimagine Runnemede.
And are you a nonprofit now? That's cool.
Yeah, so what happened was not having a background in arts administration or, understanding what I knew change could be done through the arts, but I didn't know the clear path for that. So one of the things that's part of my artistic practice is always to do a lot of research. So I began doing that. And through that, I met Tara Moen from the FOF coalition in Woodbury. And I invited her to come to speak to our little core group. And Tara made the suggestion that our group would be much more efficient if we were not a mayor's committee, but actually a nonprofit. So that's how we started.
Just give me some date, like how long has the beginning? So
okay, so I would say the beginning of Reimagine Runnemede in that core period, it was about 8 months to a year in our initial having meetings, doing research, looking at things, until that fateful day where we brought Tara in and she talked to us. And at that point, people in the room got excited, and someone had a some legal background that they understood part of the process of forming a nonprofit. So we went down that route and we incorporated it as a nonprofit.
And so in comparison, Newark Arts has been around for how long, Regina?
42 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
there you go.
So building trust takes a long time is maybe the synopsis, right? Of that.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and then, you all referred to conversations in terms of the cultural planning that was involved. So what types of local conversations really are the most helpful? Because I know Ken talked a little bit about, working with businesses and, in a smaller town. And then in terms of the conversations that led to the cultural plan, in Newark, if you could just which conversations were the most helpful or are the most helpful?
I think one of the biggest ones was around funding. At the time I was working at a gallery, and there were 2 galleries in Newark that closed due to lack of funding support. That was Algira and City Without Walls. It was really devastating, for our community to have that loss. But it also opened our eyes to seeing how we really needed to advocate for arts funding. And that's how the mayor then prioritized the Creative Catalyst Fund, which I was able to design with support from Bloomberg Associates, a pro bono consulting arm of Bloomberg. And so that funding, though, in exploring the issue of funding, that also had to be looked at, because it wasn't just funding for institutions that was necessary. It was funding for smaller institutions that needed to be prioritized, as well as institutions that maybe weren't nonprofits, so LLCs, and then also funding for individual artists. And so we had to do some research and just looking at other municipalities to see how cities allocated funding for the arts, and where in our city budget could we pull that funding from, whether it's, community block development grants or ARP funds or capital improvement grants. We had to work with our finance department and Department of Economic and Housing Development to try and figure out a source for that funding.
Yeah. And then Newark Arts was asked to be the fiscal conduit for those funds. And so that's been, a real very close working relationship. And
An important one too, because cities have different processes and how payments are made, right? And it can be difficult. In New Jersey, you have to have a BRC and an AA 302, and you have to collect all of this information from the vendors, which can really slow down the payment process. So being able to work with our local arts agency, Newark Arts, really was also helpful. But then, of course, we had to create an MOU that had to be approved by City Council to create that agreement.
Which leads me to the next question. What's the best way for local arts leaders to understand the needs of local government in terms of, the legal requirements, the insurance requirements, like you mentioned, Fayemi, the MOU, how I think for the most part, when you're a local, and I'm going back to sort of the small agency in comparison, they're not aware of what local government needs to make things happen. How do you make that happen?
Starting from scratch with nothing. Well, I would say it really is important for mayors and cities to create the position for someone to work in, and that's specifically their task and their role. There has to be coordination between the city, the artists, the arts agencies, and the institution. And so I do really think that's where you have to begin. But then one thing that's really helpful that we do in Newark is we have Friday directors meetings with our mayor. And every director from every department comes and we kind of report out what we're working on. And that's how we find out what support we need from each other.
Mm.
So if I'm, working on a public art project or a mural, say for instance, there's a lot of debris or garbage around, I can ask Department of Public Works, can you guys come out and kind of clean up the area before we go out there? And that's just one example of the kind of coordination that's needed in the administration.
Mm.
And it's a model that, dare I say, even Jeremy Johnson, who used to be the executive director of Newark Arts, has taken in terms of his new role. He brought recently a group of 26 leaders from Cleveland to come and see, not only the work that's being done in Newark, but also I think he's advocating for the new mayor of Cleveland to have a position of director of arts and culture. So
they did. They announced it just about a week or so ago. They have a new art czar that was appointed by their mayor. So
okay.
So
I was so
Jeremy's
happy
doing his
to
job.
see.
Yeah, we would not expect less from him. A
Mhm.
question came up, is exactly what is an MOU?
That's an agreement, basically, memo of understanding. And so we have certain thresholds that if an organization or a vendor is going to receive over a certain amount of money, it has to be approved by city council. And you have to have a memo of understanding created or sometimes you have to do a public RFP, an open call for organizations to respond to this request for whatever services are needed. And so if the services needed are a fiscal conduit, you might have more than one organization in your city who could serve as a fiscal conduit. But that MOU or RFP will kind of outline what specific services are needed. Maybe you want reporting services on it, outlined in a certain kind of way, or maybe you want an organization to have a certain amount of years of experience working with the artist community. Those kind of things are important to have in place also.
And I don't know if there's anything on a small town level that resembles that. I know even in my town, we don't have an official MOU. We have a public art master plan that we lean on that was approved by town council to help us offer some guidelines.
Yeah, I would say at this point, we do not. What has, I guess, happened in our town, the times that things seemed to go the smoothest was when we had, the support of at least one member from the town council who was actively coming out to our board meetings and really felt some engagement. And they were able to then go back and lubricate the wheels by talking to the other members of the town council. And that has come and gone. We're at the point now where we do not have that sort of direct support from, someone on the town council that is also part of our board. And that came down as, it's strange. It seemed like internal pressure from the town council that there was a conflict of interest if someone from the town council was actually, part of our executive board. So, we lost that support, and there's been a lot of, implications because of that. I think that the trust level has gone, down, and it's been much more difficult for us to move things forward. One of the things that I have noticed in other towns of a similar size is a lot of the catalyst for change is not necessarily coming, well, it rarely comes from within the town council themselves. There's always some sort of outside force that's coming in and saying things could be better if we did this, and someone is coming in with a plan. One of the, I would say the model that appears to be the most effective for some other small towns around us are ones that have created a business improvement district, or have become part of like the Main Street model, or some other outside program with a different structure, because they're, somehow perceived as having, more clout, I guess, with the town council to push something forward, as opposed to what we have is an all volunteer group that's made up of actual members of our community. So, it's interesting that, the towns sometimes are seeking outside development to come in to change things, and that has an effect. And then, it's trying to balance the voice of the people that live within the community and what they want, and what that ends up looking like.
So yeah, when Ken mentioned outside forces, I saw Fayemi shaking her head.
Well, yes, because you still need input from the artist community and people and arts administrators who do this work. Even if you have a business improvement district that could take the lead on some of the work, if you don't have people within that agency that have
Exactly.
experience in the arts, we have good intentions, but then people don't always know how these things work, right? And so that's why having, I think, committees, even if they're not on your board, having advisory committees or public art commissions or ordinances created, like a % for art ordinance, those are things that can be done collaboratively between the arts community and the administration.
Right.
So just want to point out that on our mayor's committee page at ArtPride's website, we're building an ordinance library. And so what we'll have there are a list of the different towns that have established arts and cultural commissions, what kind of ordinances guide that. Public art, what guides that, murals specifically because they vary from town to town. And some other aspects of what ordinances are required for. So we'll have it's growing, and I think Vince put we'll have a link for that. If not now, it's not complete yet. In a bit. Last question is, even in your town or maybe outside of Runnemede or Newark, are there examples that of municipalities that have really honored the contributions of their local artists? And you can cite your town or someone else's that you just sort of like sticks in your head as being really incredibly valuable.
Well, of course, I'd say Newark is doing a wonderful job, but I also would have to give a nod to Jersey City. And I was very impressed by the fact how they created kind of a % for art initiative by getting the support from their taxpayers to take a portion of their taxes to dedicate to the arts. I think that really is a wonderful example of an entire city that understands the impact and public benefit of the arts.
I would agree, absolutely. And Newark has the privilege of having an arts mayor, so I think that really sets the tone. And Fayemi has spoken to how it also sets, the putting this into practice. So.
Yeah, I would say around us in South Jersey, the towns that I've seen, historically that, are always held up on the pedestal is, Haddonfield, Collingswood, and then some of the other towns that I think are, coming along and doing some amazing things. Woodbury has made some really great changes, and those I think have come through as a result of the efforts of the FOF coalition for helping to work with the town council to organize an amazing summer music festival that they do. So it's specific thing. Let's see, Pittman, New Jersey, Mantua, the total redesign of Glassboro. And a lot of that came from, the money, I guess, from Rowan University that had helped to redo the, create really a new downtown area. And those examples often are tying in with what is historic, what is unique about those individual towns, not necessarily copying something that another town has done, but what is our unique character and how can we develop that? But a lot of it comes down to programming and how to consistently, consistently have festivals, events, and that is challenging because of personnel.
And also again, funding, right? I think public-private partnerships have also really benefited us, the city, and we have corporations like Audible and Prudential that give significantly to arts institutions and events like festivals. And I think having those kind of public-private partnerships are essential as well.
I was just about to say that. I was like, what's the name of the collective? The Artist Collective, where Audible, brought more than 20 artists together to do public art installations. And, that's a real game changer. It adds to, what has already been Newark Arts for its 40th anniversary dedicated a digital public map really to the city. That was our gift, our birthday gift, the annual 40th anniversary gift to the city. And what it means is that you can follow all the public art that's throughout the city and know you can click and see who the artist is. And that's a very robust thing. Also, the city itself, Invest Newark, determined that there were 2 streets downtown that they wanted to improve and leverage the arts to do that. So that's Treat Place and Fayemi.
McCarter Highway.
Well, McCarter Highway was kind of first, that long mural along. But what art does is it changes even like a street. It can change a vacant lot and repurpose it for community activity. It just changes the tenor of an area. And so Treat Place now has 14 plus murals, world-class murals and it's a destination now,
Yes.
years later. And it was called the Four Corners Project. And that's a public-private situation where developers came together. We're partners in this along with Invest Newark. Newark Arts was the fiscal sponsor conduit for that to get that work done. We had Rebecca Jampol as the project manager, and literally it is, in fact, you mentioned earlier, Anne Marie, that you like the slogan, Newark is for artists, and that is one of the murals on that strip. And now the businesses that are Broad Street facing have opened their back doors to Treat Place. So, and they've done, there's been music, marts in the summer. I mean, it's a whole nother vibe.
Yeah. So, and I think, Audible recognizes the value of having a creative environment for their workers and, to locate to, and maybe future discussions for this group through the Mayor's Committee could be also working with academic institutions like Rutgers. I know you're heavily involved in that, and Ken mentioned Rowan, and also business improvement districts. So we've got a lot to look forward to with other discussions. I think this is a good place to end. I want to thank everybody. Unless anybody wants to throw in a question at the last minute, I'm going to please ask you, whoever our participants are, to engage your colleagues to join the Mayor's Committee for Arts and Culture. Sign up for the news. You can use e-newsletter on our website that goes out in 6-week intervals. And what we do is try to offer some practical ways that arts and culture are making a difference in towns throughout New Jersey that mayors can replicate in an easy way. And it's like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's make this, something like this happen. And then once again, ArtPride will be an exhibitor at the New Jersey League of Municipalities Conference in November. And we will have a panel discussion on that Tuesday, November 14th at 2:30. And I want to thank Regina and Ken and Fayemi for being here early this morning. And you all are, I don't have to like poke you to talk, which is great. I love that. And thank you for your expertise and for giving us some things that are common and things that are different between, working with a small organization, working with a large organization, working with big government, working with small government. So thanks very much, everybody, for being here this morning.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
Bye.
Bye.